everybody for your patience and for coming down on short notice. I'm going to go over this incident, how the police department, how this police chief became aware of it, and we're going to talk a little bit about what occurred, how we got here today, where we're at with this incident, but more importantly, what we've been doing and where we're still heading. This is a journey that we're in as a community, as a nation, and I just want to start off by saying that my heart was sickened and saddened when I first learned of this incident on July 19th, 2016. Rosemary Lindbergh, our district attorney, called me and advised me that Tony Pletsky from the Statesman was working on a story involving an incident that occurred on June 15th, 2015, over a year ago, involving Miss Breon King. First and foremost, let me just say this to Breon King, her family, her friends, her neighbors, her supporters. I'm sorry that on the day that you were stopped for going 15 miles per hour, you were approached in a manner and treated in a manner that is not consistent with the expectations of this police chief, of most of the officers of this police department, and most importantly, I think of all of us as human beings in terms of how the way we should be talking to each other, treating one another, and especially as police officers have a sworn duty to try to calm things down, approach incidents, approach people in a manner that enhances the probability that everyone gets to go on with their day, especially over a speeding ticket, and that we build relationships while we're doing our job, that sometimes we're selling products that nobody wants to buy, which is sometimes jail, sometimes it's tickets. But there's a way to do this job. And that day, we did not approach it anywhere near where we should have approached it. And I can tell you that I think that most police officers would feel the same way. And those that don't, when they review this tape, you need to really check your heart. So I want to apologize to Breon and her family. This incident resulted in her being removed from her car by one of our officers. He actually asked her to get her feet back in the car. I'm not going to regurgitate the video, it really speaks for itself. But you know, people, life happens, and people, their minds are all over the place. You know, we got people going to lunch, people not paying attention, people not understanding, and it's our job to do a much better job of communicating and using our words and our verbal communication skills to gain compliance before we ever go hands-on. The department has a review process that we'll talk about in a little bit. But when you have something like this, what's really disheartening is that all the great work that goes on in the city of Austin by a lot of dedicated professionals, all the great work that has been going on in the city of Austin and will continue in the city of Austin by activists and clergy and police officers, and all the good things that our folks do gets overshadowed by an incident that was really avoidable, by an incident that should never occurred, by an incident where through patience, which is what we get paid to be, especially when there's no exigency, shouldn't have happened. Now, this incident, in terms of the removal of Ms. King from her car and the takedown to the ground and the in-custody arrest, was reviewed as a level 3 use of force, which is a use of force where there is no serious injury or complaint. It was reviewed despite the fact that the young lady, Breon, did not complain. We still have a protocol in place to review it. The chain of command reviewed this incident back when it occurred, consistent with our use of force policy, response resistance policy, and determined that the officer had not approached that situation in a manner consistent with the way this department would expect our officers to conduct themselves and approach the situation. The chain of command, it went up to the commander. As far as I know, we don't know yet exactly how far it went up in terms of if he had any discussions with any executive team members here at headquarters. The chain of command determined at that time that although the incident was not consistent with the expectations of the department, they opted to handle that exchange with Ms. King as a training issue and with counseling. I have ordered an administrative investigation into the actual stop and arrest of Ms. King to include what's happened with that officer since that time. You know, this chain of command opted to rely on informal discipline and training, informal corrective action, and one of the things that that have ordered our Internal Affairs Division is to conduct an exhaustive review of the involved officer, the arresting officer's conduct since that time. And that has begun and been ordered. The District Attorney's Office, Rosemary Lemberg, in talking with her on the 19th, made a request that our Special Investigations Unit conduct a criminal investigation of the arresting officer's actions that are well documented on that video, so that she can either present to a grand jury or decline to present to a grand jury, but so her and her staff can make a better informed decision in terms of whether or not his conduct rises to a criminal offense. That investigation is ongoing. I've also ordered an administrative inquiry into the chain of command's decision-making process in this incident, how they came to their determinations, what discussions were had, why I was not kicked up to my level, because I think that my reaction may be a little bit different than their reaction. I'll handle it a little bit differently, but I want to withhold my final judgment on that until I finish the administrative inquiry into the chain of command's decision-making process. The Special Investigations Unit will continue to conduct this investigation and will provide its findings under the auspices of the District Attorney's Office here in the upcoming days. I also have asked my team to look at a second video that we had not uncovered before, we had not seen, we were not aware of until it was brought to our attention by the District Attorney's Office on the 19th. The thought process and the statements made by our officer that was having what appears to be, from just looking at it, that he thinks he's having a normal conversation. It's okay to have this conversation, but the way he's thinking, on his way to the jail as an American, as a police chief, as a law enforcement and peace officer that's dedicated my entire adult life to public service, myself and my command staff, and I'm so heartened to know that the Austin Police Association labor are taken aback by that mindset, those statements. This is 2016. And so I've ordered an investigation into that officer's conduct, to see, to audit everything that he's done that we can possibly audit, to see, to make sure that that mindset is not having an impact on the way that he is treating people in this city. And we'll continue with that administrative investigation. Both officers are on non-law enforcement duty. They're being required to come in and actually do some work, but they're on non-law enforcement duty. They will not be working as peace officers while we conduct these investigations. Let me be real clear about two things, and I think it's really critical. Number one, this is this is not, I believe, reflective of the quality of this organization that we run. But you know, we have to be realists. I get beat up. You know, we're living in a really interesting time where nobody wants to look at anything through the prism of people that don't look like them. I get beat up for standing up here with Black Lives Matter. I get beat up by a lot of people for standing up with Black Lives Matter. I get beat up for standing with the Austin Justice Coalition. And you know, people may fool themselves, but being in policing for 30 years, I understand the human condition. It is an imperfect condition. We have good and bad in everything. We have people that do well. We have people that fall short. And for those that think that life is perfect for people of color, I want you to listen to that conversation and tell me that we don't have social issues in this nation. Issues of bias, issues of racism, issues of people being looked at differently because of their color. And all Americans that watch this dialogue should A, take exception, and B, recognize that we as a nation, this department as a department, this city, this state, will never ever achieve the unity across race and socioeconomic status until we have that internal conversation. Yesterday I brought in my entire command staff and we reviewed that video, both of those videos. Heartened by the fact that they seem to get it right away. But there's a problem because this was not kicked up to our level back in 15. So we're going to look at that process. We're going to look at our systems because we need to be made aware of these kind of incidents. And you know, most of the times we do, but it always makes you wonder, is there something else out there? You know, there's something else out there that we don't know as an organization. And so we are going to be reviewing our systems and our processes to look for opportunities for improvement. Now, our department has already conducted training on biases for all of our patrol officers. That will continue. The actual bias-based profiling training was conducted for all patrol by training that was provided by Dr. Alex Del Carmen. I'm very pleased to say that I reached out to Director Ron Davis of the United States Departments of Justice Office of Community Outreach Programs and explained to him that we need some assistance. He has committed to providing the resources of the COPS office to provide additional training to our folks that he believes, and I believe, the Department of Justice believes, is the best available, and we will be rolling that out here very shortly. The training is actually explicit and implicit bias training, fair and impartial policing, and it is provided by Dr. Friedel, and that will be forthcoming very shortly. I'm proud of the fact that we have federal partners that don't just point the finger, but actually want to work with law enforcement, recognizing that when these incidents occur, we have to continue to seek excellence. There's another piece that is really disturbing to me, and that's to my community, especially my community of color. I understand the hesitancy because, again, I've been doing this a long time. People are hesitant to come forward and let us know when we don't do the right things. People are hesitant to come forward and let us know about a conversation that is exposing a mindset that may be that person's mindset, maybe somebody else's, but a mindset that has no business in society, but definitely has no business in policing. I want to work tirelessly to convince my community that when they are not treated in a manner consistent with the way they should be treated, you are our eyes and ears. We have a collective duty and responsibility, we have a collective responsibility to help keep this community safe, to help weed out bad officers, and to help support the very vast majority of police officers that are good, honorable professionals. Because when we don't come forward, everyone loses. And it just saddens me that after having that conversation, something that I'm not doing, or something that I am doing, something that our profession is doing, for over a year, we didn't hear from Ms. King. And so I want this community to know that this is your police department. We are here and we're a phone call away. The police monitor is here and they're a phone call away. We need your help. We're going to look at some strategies on providing almost on all contacts information to the members of this community on how to complain. I know that folks sometimes are afraid that A, we'll do nothing, or B, there'll be retaliation. I can tell you If anybody ever gets retaliated against by my police officers for complaining, not only will those officers be looking for a job, we'll do everything we can to prosecute them for retaliation, which is a criminal offense. So please come forward, and we will be rolling out a process by which people will know when we contact their rights in terms of filing a complaint. I reached out to my colleague in Seattle, Chief Kathleen O'Toole, who's one of the finest law enforcement leaders in the country, and they're under a consent decree over there. And I asked her, hey, tell me about this process where you let folks know on every contact as part of that consent decree how they can complain, and we're going to adopt that here. We're going to be looking at our review processes in terms of not only the level 3 complaints, but also on the resisting arrest charges. About several months ago, I ordered my team to include in what we call the Guidance Advisory Program, which is a risk management professional standards program that we have instituted here that captures data on all officers, that includes use of force, includes complaints, it includes sick leave, it includes crashes. Another thing that I've asked them to start capturing is resisting arrest complaints, because we know that there are times when police officers, those complaints can be based on some very questionable circumstances. Those charges come through. I ordered that several months ago. We are working on the programming of the actual GAP system. It's been delayed, but that is coming. We also asked them to add public intoxication arrests, other arrests that we think may be used improperly if we don't monitor that, and that's forthcoming. Let me talk a little bit about what's going on in the city. Yesterday, we had a meeting here on the 5th floor of the Austin Police Department that it was the first since I've been here. You all know that the APA, which is the union, and this police chief have plenty of battles. We all know that they weren't too happy with me after the David Joseph Oswald shooting, where we had Black Lives Matter and other community activists stand with the police chief. Yesterday, we had a 3.5-hour meeting. It included activists, African-American activists from this community that have been working with the police department for over 2 years now. It included the clergy. I've got Rick Randall, our chaplain here, that runs our chaplain program, that does a fantastic job of working with the clergy. But this meeting included the Austin Police Association, the acting president, and the vice president at large. It included the Reverend G.V. Clark, who's the moderator of the St. John's Regular Association of Black Baptist Ministers. It included the Reverend Darrell Horton, the president of the Baptist Ministers Union. It included Larry Coulter of the Christ Together Greater Austin and IACT, which is an interfaith group. It included A.W. Mays. It included Ashton Cumberbatch, who's a tremendous community leader. And I'll tell you that, as disheartened as I am as your police chief, standing here apologizing to this community for coming short, and apologizing to the very good men and women that comprise the majority of this department, something has happened yesterday that we had a 3.5-hour meeting where I can see group, especially labor and activists, that talk past each other. Spend 3.5 hours having some really open, heartfelt dialogue, not as cops, not as white people, brown people, but as people of this community. And I wish that I could have captured that, to share that with everybody that's watching this, because I am convinced that not only is that a first, I'm hopeful that we're going to see some great things moving forward in terms of this relationship. And I don't know if people have seen the statement of the Austin Police Association, but I want to read it. they've released it, and it says, we understand the public's reaction to Officer Richter's response to resistance. Officer Spradlin's comments were wrong and not reflective of the values and beliefs of the men and women who serve this community. We recognize how incidents such as these can divide our city and cause mistrust. We have met with community stakeholders and begun a dialogue. We hope that the conversation will lead to substantive changes that will help bridge the divide. So think about that. That wouldn't have happened just 3 months ago. We will take these set of circumstances and we wind up in a better place. That is our commitment, because this is a journey that never ends. The journey of seeking excellence never ends. But I think the lessons learned for us as a police department is we still have work to do. It will be still here long after I'm gone. We can never rest on our laurels. But I think the other piece is, for those that think that people of color don't have grievances, I want you to watch and listen. And I've asked my own people to go out, look at these videos, and I want them to ask themselves, am I approaching a 50-mile-per-hour speeding ticket like that? Am I treating somebody because they're speeding to lunch like they just robbed the bank? Is that the way I want my loved one treated when they're in a hurry? Everything can't be a conspiracy for police officer. Everything can't be something bad. And the last thing I asked him is, watch that interaction in that car. There is no room, not only here, because these issues aren't just in law enforcement. These issues are societal. Go read the blogs that will be out there. The hatred, it's real. I'm going to continue to be vigilant, and I ask my community to continue to be vigilant. But more importantly, I want this community to take this, to start looking at things through the prism of people whose shoes they don't walk in. And next time they see a police chief standing with Black Lives Matter and standing for Black Lives Matter and other activist groups, understand there's a reason for that. And what I loved about our meeting yesterday, and I'm going to shut up and I think that I've covered everything, open it to questions, is this. I saw movement yesterday. Where we started that 3.5 hour meeting and where we ended were two very different places. But the work is not done. The work is, again, beginning. Because every time we have these instances, it really does wipe out a lot of good work. But we have a tremendous opportunity, and I'm convinced that our young activists that we've been working with, I'm convinced that the APA got to see some and have some real heartfelt conversations yesterday, no screaming on the street, but really heartfelt conversations. I'm convinced that good things are going to happen out of this, and that's going to be our silver lining. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Let's start with mindset. You talked a lot about that, and the officer's mindset in that conversation, in that second video, where they were having a conversation about race, and she's asking him his perceptions on race. Just to be clear, what is the APD policy on mindset? Because that seems like that's a tough thing to police, and how do you enforce it?
I mean, listen, part of the problem is that we do our assessments, we do our background investigations, we do our psychological examinations. Somebody in a meeting, and I won't say who, said, well, we just need to, and it was somebody from the community said, well, we should teach officers to just be quiet and just transport them to jail. And I say, that's great, but we never know about that mindset. We never know about that had he not said those things. So I said, I have to disagree. If somebody's thinking that way or has anything even close remotely to that, I want it to manifest itself in verbally or in action so we can deal with it. So what we can do is, I really believe that if you look at what's going on in our country, we all have biases, all of us. Anybody that denies that is lying to themselves. I really believe that the quality of training that's going on in the country now, that's just really starting to spread. And we've done Blue Courage for our leadership cadre. We just started the bias-based policing. We're going to do the one now that the Director Davis has committed to bring shortly. We have to create safe spaces in the workplace to have these tough conversations, because overcoming bias starts with the recognition that it occurs in the first place. And I think that the way that we're going to have to do that is through some additional extensive training. The way we're going to have to do that is to hold people accountable when a bias or a prejudice or a racist tendency manifests itself in behavior. And I think the only way we're going to do that is to have really tough, honest conversations. And again, if this community would have seen that conversation and where it started yesterday in hour one and where it ended in 3.5 hours later, it was a wonderful thing to experience.
Is there a written policy though about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and go regurgitate policy. We can show all your policies later. Our people want to police without regard to race and sexual orientation, religion. I mean, that is policing 101. But you know, folks, we can't be silly. We can't be naive to think that we don't have biases. We all have them. We all have prejudice in this world, and I think part of the problem in society is that people look at everything through their own prism. I mean, like I said, the hateful stuff I get when I stand with the Muslim community. Oh, they're a bunch of terrorists, all of them. No, they're not a bunch of terrorists. There are some wonderful ones that can. When I stand up and say, stop the villainizing immigrants, you know, they're all rapists and murderers, I get beat up for that. You know, when I stand up and say, not all cops are bad, it's a societal issue, and we don't grow cops in a petri dish. They come from society, so we have to continue to work.
Can you confirm that the officers involved were Brian Richter and Patrick Spradlin?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll give you how many years have been on that team.
Okay. Are they both white?
Yes.
Okay. Would you consider Officer Spradlin's comments to be racist?
Yes. That mindset. I can't denounce that what he had to say any stronger. It was very disturbing to me. Now, we have to look at exactly, we have to do some further looking, because when you look at it, there's a guy that's trying to have a conversation. I know he's trying to be a social scientist, so I can't get in his heart at this point, but there's an administrative investigation going into that I have to withhold final judgment until I get to understand and talk to him. We get to understand and talk to him further. Having said that, he tried to, if you look at the comments, it's, you know, this is not me, or, you know, he backs away from that. It's still very disturbing. So it's something we're looking at.
And you didn't hear from Mrs. King. This only came about today because of the newspaper story.
The district attorney called me on the 19th, and we weren't aware of that video of the transporting officer.
So King never filed a complaint?
No, sir.
Okay. And King didn't approach you before Lemberg told you that a reporter had called?
No, I don't have any knowledge of that. No, the OPM doesn't either.
So you had the meeting with the activists yesterday. So that's the
another meeting. I mean, we have ongoing meetings, but yes.
But yeah, the 3.5-hour one that you were referring to. So you heard about this after the district attorney called you. Did this come up in the conversation with Black Lives Matter?
This meeting was to go over the videos with them and to share it with them and to have some really frank conversation about you know, the work to be done. And what I love is, you know, people don't understand in a lot of cities, Austin's a very special place. We are a model for this nation on how we resolve differences, how we resolve shortcomings, how we resolve conflict. It's not in going out and killing cops. It's not in going out and having us versus them. It's us in coming together and saying, hey, you fell short. Here's what you did wrong. Here's what I need. Here's what we need. I mean, we were talking about bringing, and we are bringing, our activists to talk about some of the metrics and some of the things that we're going to be looking at in the future, and having the community build the characteristics of the officers that we should be looking for as we recruit the officers moving forward. We have a meeting that we're setting up on that. We've been talking about. There's so many wonderful things going on, and what really frustrates me is that, you know, I get letters about cops changing tires. You've all seen our cops changing tires on the freeways. Just so many wonderful things that go on. Now, it kind of erases it all. So now you've got a bunch of other hardworking men and women that have to work that much harder to rebuild trust. And so, but we're not going to stop.
So
What
these
else?
officers are currently on desk duty. I mean, at what point, when they're done with their counseling, do they return?
Well, we have some investigations going on. We are auditing. Part of that administrative inquiries is auditing all their activity. So I can't tell you what's going to happen because those investigations are ongoing.
Do you have a deadline for those investigations?
It's going to take as long as it takes to go as far as we can go to review their conduct. I mean, they're off the streets, and so I don't want to, I want to go back as far as we need to go, and so I don't think that there's a rush to get back there right now. We've got plenty of time, and because we're not just looking at one incident, right? We're going to be looking at their body of work. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but
I don't want. Well, you've got 6 months in the civil service under most circumstances, absent criminal charges, to discipline somebody beyond a written reprimand, anything beyond a written reprimand. So we're going to start with that 6-month window. That makes sense to you? And look as much of that 6-month body of work, and then once we're done with that, we may go back a little further. But that 6-month window will give us a good picture as to, is, my officer transporting Miss King, is he just, having this crazy mindset conversation or is he doing stuff at work that he shouldn't be doing? We will have a good picture. Just remember that most of our contacts on patrol, there's either going to be video or audio on a lot of it. So we'll have plenty of things to look at to see if we have a problem outside of these 2 specific videos with these officers, and we're going to look for it very carefully.
You have today, you apologized in front of all these cameras to Ms. King. Will there be any further action? You're going to meet with her?
Well, I mean, I don't know if she's representing. That's the frustrating thing for me. I've been accused. I always try to call and give my condolences on use of deadly force incidents to families if they're at the scene. Over the years, no matter whether it's the most legitimate officer-involved incident or the most illegitimate officer-involved incident, we show empathy to folks. And so over the years, I've had the opportunity to meet with just about everybody, majority of the folks, and personally offer condolences to people, whether the officers acted appropriately or not, right, use of deadly force. But then there have been instances where once they're being represented by counsel that I may not have that opportunity, but I do plan on reaching out. I didn't reach out before this because I don't want people to say, oh, you're just doing it just because it's on TV. No, I'm going to do it, but and Ms. King will know if she meets with me, whether it's legit or not, in terms of my feelings.
Going back to the arrest, I've spoken with even some of your officers who say, comply first and complain later. What do you say to that?
Well, listen, I was in Houston a few months ago at a TMPA conference, and I gave a presentation. I had the opportunity to sit there and listen to a black pastor from Houston who's got a huge congregation. And he says, I always preach to folks, comply first, complain later. But and I get that. But you know what? How about we start with honey first and stay with honey as long as you can before we turn to vinegar. That's a two-edged sword. That's a double-sided coin. And so it is important to comply with officers. If nothing else, it's for everybody's safety, including the person. But at what point, if people aren't being treated right, people sooner or later are going to have a butt. I'm not talking about this incident, I'm just talking about in general. We can't be going around approaching everything either stopping Al Capone, he's running away from you, So, yeah, I get that, and I think that most people understand that. I know that that's the way I've always told my kid. My son's 25, my daughter's 28, and I've got a little hellraiser that I worry about. He's either going to be in filthy rich, or he's going to go in prison. He's just a rambunctious kid. I've always trained my kids. I don't care when you get stopped by the police. and I'm not talking about this instance, I'm just talking about in general. You brought it up, because I don't want people to accuse me of trying to justify behavior. You just do what they say, and if there's a problem, we will deal with it later. My parents used to tell me as a young man, and I think people forget them, Latino, we're sometimes the forgotten ethnicity in our country. Now I'm an immigrant, and my dad and mom used to say, hey, you can get out of jail, son, you can't get out of the cemetery. Don't you ever run, I won't care what you did, you always comply with the police. And I'm just talking about in general, and again, you brought that question up, because that's not, the issue here is that we have to learn how to just talk to people. And I expect people to approach a 15-mile-per-hour speeding ticket very differently than what we approached that situation. Okay?
Also, just one last question. Some people have said that they spotted this particular Officer Richter, I believe, at undercover in some activist rallies for Black Lives Matter. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that. So, but he's, I tell you right now, he's not out working. So he's doing administrative duties while we conduct.
Since when?
When did that start?
A couple days ago. Let me just say one last thing. Officer Richter and Officer Alden, to those. Again, people think that threatening police officers is a joke. We don't go around threatening them. Don't play your games. It's a crime as well to go online and threaten people. Let us do our jobs and let us do our reviews. I look forward to reporting back in the upcoming weeks the continued good work that's happening in the Austin Police Department with our community. And I look forward to seeing some great things come out of a situation where we fell very short. Thank you.